What's up, everybody? This is Zips once again here, and tonight we're gonna give you a review for Amnesia, a machine for pigs, developed by the Chinese Room, who you may know from Dear Esther, and published by Frictional Games, who worked on Amnesia: The Dark Descent, the prequel to this game, even though the storylines aren't really related. We're gonna give a bit of an impromptu review for this. This is basically just from notes from my playing through it. Again, I'm doing a let's play of this, so the first part's already up. The second part's probably be up very, very soon if it's not up already at the same time this review goes up. So I'll leave a link for the first video in the description below, and even a quick look video I've done already. I'll leave a link for that in the description below. Now, Amnesia Machine for Pigs once again places you in the shoes of a man who has mysteriously lost his memory. As with The Dark Descent, the player is learning of the story and past events of the game world at the same time as Oswald Mandis, a man that seems to have a rather unsavory past full of death, disaster, and heartbreak. A man that may or may not have two children that may or may not be still alive. Children, mind you, that constantly freak you out as they lead you through the environments from afar, calling out to you and making you continue on. Oswald is a man who may have had a hand in creating a machine. Say a machine that may or may not be used for some rather unsavory experiments. A machine that may be the reason for the creation of some horrific abomination against nature. Since the end of the 19th century, a machine for pigs once again makes you question just what is real and what is the result of an ongoing fever dream in Mandis' mind. Now, the gameplay of a machine for pigs is very, very streamlined compared to The Dark Descent. There is no inventory menu to deal with at all. There are only journals, notes, and the ability to carry items to solve puzzles, and obviously the ability to open doors and, dresser drawers and stuff like that. There is a much, much greater emphasis on the environment as a source of scares and a means of storytelling. I can't even describe just how great the environments are in this game at putting you on the edge of your seat. We'll get back to that here in a minute, but I just wanted to really emphasize how good that aspect of this game is. Again, there is no inventory micromanagement. Depending on how you look at this might be a positive, this might be a negative. This game is still very, very similar to The Dark Descent in that there is a few puzzles to solve. There's nothing too difficult. There were a couple difficult ones in The Dark Descent. This one, not terribly difficult. Very, very, very light backtracking. And again, unlike The Dark Descent, where you backtrack a little bit more, not so much of that in this one. You do, again, use your light to illuminate your surroundings, and light is also used to hide in this one. There's not really many places that you can crawl into or shut a door like the closets in The Dark Descent. There are plenty of notes to read to get the backstory, plenty of audio logs to listen to, and even phone calls to take from a mysterious stranger, which you will find out more about as you play through the game. The game is incredibly atmospheric, probably more so than anything you have ever seen in The Dark Descent, with the exception of maybe a few custom campaigns here and there. The story is again told through notes that you find throughout the environment, so you want to be very thorough, like, checking everything that you can open. You want to look in, you want to see a note, you're going to read it. There is one overarching story, but there are a few separate smaller stories that are just meshed into the main overarching story, so that's very, very cool. Again, there are brief flashback sequences like in The Dark Descent. Your screen will kind of get all hazy and fuzzy, a little blurred, bright white light and stuff like that, and you'll hear voices talking of past events that occurred, or music playing from the past, which really isn't playing in the present where your character is. So that's very, very cool. Recorded audio logs again provide more backstory. So that's all. It's fantastic storytelling. The Chinese Room always does a great job of storytelling, at least in my experience with Dear Esther, which I love dearly. So they again continue their trend of being just masterful storytellers throughout a game. In my case, the game offered up scares more from the environment than from some of the enemies. Like the first part of the game, you really won't even see any enemies for, I'm gonna say, maybe until about an hour into it. So a lot of the scares come from the tension of the situation and the unknown. The environment does an incredible job at scaring you more so than the Dark Descent environments ever could. It managed to frighten me thanks to the background ambient noises, the rare occurrences of music, the creaks and groans of a massive machine coming to life at probably the most inopportune moments in the game, where I just kind of froze up and like, what's going on? Just shaking of the screen and the environment as the machine roars to life every so often. It's fantastic. I mean, seriously, it's great. It's just, wow. It's something you probably will see in the videos, the Let's Play videos, but I'm just saying right now, it's great. I love it. Now, for all the improvements that the gameplay has, made over the Dark Descent, there are some negatives to it. Again, it's streamlined, which I did list as a positive, but it's also pretty big negative here, depending on what kind of a fan of the series or the genre that you are. There is a lack of insanity effects. In Dark Descent, when you approach an enemy or an enemy is approaching you, your screen will get all blurry, your guy, he starts breathing heavily and he kind of gets low to the ground and all that. I didn't really notice that in this one. I mean, there was an enemy just, a few feet from me in this, with nothing between me and him besides a dark corner. My guy did nothing. Now, I don't know why that was removed, but for some reason it was. I don't really mind that it was gone too much, but I know a lot of people will probably have an issue with that. The game is, I hate to say this, but it is overly simplified. The streamlining in some areas seemed like a great idea to keep the flow of the game going strong without the need to hunt for, say, new tinderboxes or oil to refill your lantern. Yes, there are no tinderboxes in this game. Lights in the environment you can just turn on by approaching it and, putting the use key to use. Without the inventory, it feels as though a lot of the difficulty and the challenge is gone. There's no combining of objects in the inventory to create an item that will then later be used to solve a puzzle. Like, in the first game, you combined elements to make an acid to dissolve that red goop, or, a crowbar to open up doors. There's none of that. The puzzle solving in this is stuff you pick up in the environment and you carry in your hands in front of you, and you place it on the area that needs the puzzle solved, and that's pretty much it. So that's a little bit disappointing there. It just seems way too simplified and feels more that it was done to eliminate the minimal amounts of backtracking found in the Dark Descent for almost no reason other than to keep the pace of the game going strong. But it feels as though this didn't even have to happen, as the pace would still be very, very strong with these mechanics left intact. Hiding in this game feels more simplified. You don't climb into closets and shut the door and wait for an enemy to leave a room like you do in the Dark Descent. Instead, this one is more you're hiding within the environment, typically in places you feel are out in the open, such as under a table or in a dark corner, and you're just hoping and praying that the enemies didn't see you and won't eventually see you. On one hand, this is an improvement over the Dark Descent because now you have to constantly be on the lookout for nooks and crannies to hide in instead of memorizing where the nearest closet is. So that's pretty cool. I'll give it that. I really, really like that. But it's also a double-edged sword because while it adds to the tension in these encounters with enemies, it also eliminates another gameplay mechanic that was present in the previous game. And again, I don't know why this was cut out. I don't understand it. There are closets in this game, but they're all typically locked. You can't open them even. And the fact that you don't need oil or tinderboxes to turn on lights in the environment, it eliminates a lot of the hunting and the tension from the original game. Granted, there's still a lot of tension in this one, but you're not going to get that tension from being like, oh god, it's dark in here. I need to find light quick. Because hey, you just, take out your trusty lantern, which never runs out of any juice, and there you go. It's illuminating the area in front of you. I should note that the lantern in this game illuminates the area in front of you, whereas the lantern in the Dark Descent was more of a area around you that illuminated. So I do like that change. It doesn't really matter too much, but it is a nice little change there. It really just feels as though a variety of gameplay elements were stripped to make the game a bit more accessible to gamers for really no reason at all that I can think of. I'm not saying this makes the game bad, I'm just saying it makes it feel like less of a game than it should have been, given that the gameplay mechanics that were present in the original game just being stripped out. Now, for as much as I harped about some of the gameplay changes, it should be noted that that really doesn't take away too much from the game, because it makes up for it in other areas such as the audio. The audio in this game is absolutely incredible. My god, how the audio alone has managed to put me on the edge during my time playing. Sudden loud creaks and groans from the earth violently shaking around you will make you jump on more than one occasion. A ghostly organ kicks into action, playing a piece upon entering a church that will make your eyes go wide. You'll want to hightail it out of there as fast as you can before you're like, wow, there's just nothing here, I can go in. And it just keeps playing for the longest time, and it's great to listen to as you're taking in the environment around you. The game might fall apart if the audio was subpar, and thankfully the Chinese room did an absolutely amazing job here. The voice acting is superb, and a lot of the scares and tension-filled sequences would not carry much weight if the sound design wasn't as good as it is. Seriously, I just cannot say enough praise about the sound design in this game. Even when nothing is really going on, there is enough subtle background noise that you may begin to wonder, like, what was that? Was something there? Oh god, what are those sounds? And you kind of freak yourself out for pretty much no reason other than the audio is kind of spooking you a bit. It's all a very psychological mind game that comes across beautifully to perhaps offer up more unintentional scares than what the first Amnesia title did. Visually, the game improves upon The Dark Descent in just about every way imaginable. The game is still very, very atmospheric, not just thanks to the wonderful sound design, but also due to how dark the environments are. It's a horror game. If the game was bright and cheerful, it wouldn't really be all that frightening. Fortunately, the game is dark, but not overtly so to the point you can't see anything. And of course, you have lights you can turn on in your environment and the always present lantern to help light the way. There are a number of visual options you can tweak, including a variety of SSAO settings, edge smoothing, shadow quality, shadow resolution, and parallax mapping. A lot of it seems like standard fare for a PC title, but it's still very nice to see that this is all included in a modern release. It's kind of sad that we have to, make note of this, but some games just don't include stuff like this for PC games. So it's great to see that the Chinese room included this. Thank you very much for that. Now, the environments themselves are incredibly varied, including outdoor areas, which is a huge breath of fresh air when compared to The Dark Descent. You will get to walk around the city streets at a number of points in the game. Granted, these areas are really no less frightening when compared to the indoor areas, so you're still going to be on edge when you're out there. Maybe a little bit less so, but they're still contained to, a city street or something. You can't just freely roam around the city. So there is still a high degree of tension when you're out there. Each area feels like a unique experience, and there are always sights to take in. That is, when you're not running or fearing for your life. You get your outdoor areas, you get your indoor areas, you get factories you're inside a church, you're inside, underground the church. A lot of stuff to take in. It's not just like one mansion and that's it, you're done. A lot of stuff to take in. All of it looks great. In general, the game looks and sounds and plays beautifully. That is assuming you don't mind some gameplay features being completely ripped out from The Dark Descent in favor of a more story-driven game. It is essentially a game that is more of an experience than it is one where you have to think too hard about puzzles or worry about inventory micromanagement. For some, that is a great thing. For others, I can only imagine there will be a multitude of complaints. For me, I quite enjoyed it, even with some of those gameplay mechanics removed. The story, audio, and just general immersion make up for some of the gameplay changes, and I really, really do not mind those changes. And let's not forget that there will undoubtedly be a number of custom campaigns made for Machine for Pigs, just as there was for The Dark Descent, many of which were total conversions that introduced a lot of custom content. So the possibility for there being a return of tinderboxes or oil for a fuel-based lantern may still happen. It is, however, a bit of a shame that the die-hard fans would have to rely on user-created content for some of those gameplay elements to return. Even still, despite these complaints that I had, which really weren't too much of an issue for me personally, I highly recommend this game to fans of the original and for fans of quality horror games in general. You're in for a hell of a ride here with Amnesia Machine for Pigs. Just be sure to have a change of pants at the ready. I'm going to leave links in the description below where you can buy this game. It's available on Steam. It's going to be available on Steam on the 10th. This review will be up on the 9th. And I'll also leave links in the description for the start of my Let's Play, the blind Let's Play, mind you, and for the quick overview of the game, a bit of a preview. So with that said, this has been Zips, and we'll catch you next time.